Welcome to the Healing Center Conversations podcast, where we create space for conversations that heal. I'm your host, Dr. Byron McClure, a nationally certified school psychologist. I, along with our special guests, will give you insight to promote collective healing by putting people first. Through weekly conversations with educators, psychologists, and healers, we'll discuss ways to heal, thrive, and live your best life. This is the Healing Center Conversations podcast. Welcome to the Healing Center Conversations podcast, where we create space for conversations that heal. I'm your host, Dr. Byron McClure, and we have a very special guest, the good brother, Dr. Shaun Woodly. Welcome to the podcast, man.
I appreciate you, Dr. McClure. Good brother. I thank you, man, for opening up the space for me to have this conversation with you, man. I really appreciate this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for our listeners who might not be familiar, you're going to get familiar with this man. Dr. Shaun Woodly, he's a sought-after speaker and professional development expert whose highly engaging, fun, yet thought-provoking messages inspire guests for action and change. Dr. Woodly, got to put some respect on my man's name. He works with educators at all levels, specializing in helping those that serve in urban and culturally diverse communities. Man, it's a pleasure to have you on, man.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to be here. Just as you mentioned, Dr. Shaun Woodly, I am pretty much the founder, not pretty much, I am the founder of the educator movement, Teach, Hustle, Inspire. I know we're going to get into that. The Teach is about unlocking intellectual treasure. The Hustle, I'm a 90s hip hop fan, so it's about how you can't stop learning and you won't stop learning. It's continuing that cycle of growth. And the Inspire part is about spreading love and light.
Man, we're going to get into all things Teach, Hustle, Inspire. You see the swag. If you're listening, go to the YouTube channel so that you can see it. Go to my brother's website. But Shaun, okay, so we got to start way back at Hampton. So I came to Hampton. I graduated high school 2004, came in 2004. At that point, you had already graduated. You were in the process and then going on to get your master's, because we actually met at Hampton. Now, see, we got the color schemes going too. Shout out to Gamma I, Brothers
Absolutely.
of Alpha at Hampton University. But that's where you started at Hampton, correct?
That's correct. I got on this education journey at Hampton, and even honestly going back before that, I didn't truthfully go to college with the full intent on studying education. I kind of just ended up in this backhanded way into education because I really wanted to study music and play drums. That, like, I was a musician, grew up in the church. I attended, kind of just a small family oriented type of church. And I used to get down on the drums a little bit. And so, just kind of keeping that mentality, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to Hampton, get in the band, learn more about the drums. And then I'm going on tour with Busta Rhymes or somebody like that. I don't know. This was, my thought set in 99, 2000. And what had happened was when I got to Hampton, I realized very quickly that these dudes and some of my other fan sisters, they are not playing games on these drums, and they were nice. And so even though like back home I was up here, when I got to Hampton, I was like down here, and they was like up here. Such that, like, for example, one of our frat brothers, he marched in the band with me. His name is Eric Gaston, and he plays for Charlie Wilson like right now. Like, that's the level of talent that I was up against. And so I was just like, all right, you know what? Maybe this thing, playing drums professionally, is not my calling. And moreover, when I was in high school, kind of at that process, I think junior, senior year, making some decisions on college, one of my teachers at the time gave me some strong advice. And I was like, I want to study music. He was like, well, just in case you don't get picked up to go on tour right away, how about you study music and education, make yourself a little more well-rounded. Best advice I ever got at that time, like hands down. I don't know what I'd be doing right now, but I ended up getting to school, as I mentioned, studying music, studying education, got into my core education classes around, I think, junior year or so, and I really liked it. I was like, yo, this is cool from a human growth and development side, from a psychology side, from just a understanding the inner workings of learning in the mind. Like, it was really cool to me. And so like you mentioned, 2004, I graduated by the grace of God. I don't know how to this day I graduated on time, but I did. And then immediately rolled right into my 5th year to complete my master's.
And so you go through the program, you complete your master's. Then what happens after you complete your master's?
Okay, so after I got my master's, and this kind of connects to the conversation now, in my junior and senior year, I started to get this itch for entrepreneurship. I still enjoyed and wanted to study education, but I started to kind of have this desire because what I'm seeing in my mind on walking around on campus at that time, I'm seeing, especially like hanging out in the student center. If you remember, the student center and the School of Business were like directly next door. And so a
Yep.
lot of times, but what happened is I would see some of our Chaplet brothers and even some of my friends in the band coming out of the business building with suits and things, and they're reading certain books. I'm like, well, what are y'all reading? I'm looking, they're reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. They're reading this book, that book. And I'm trying to, I'm just kind of taking note. And then also what had happened was a lot of times when I would see when they would graduate and come back, they have corporate cards. I want a corporate card, So I had started to position myself traditionally. What people will do is participating in the band for that 5th year, there will be a graduate assistant in the band. And what I did to kind of position myself for entrepreneurship a little bit more is I decided to take a graduate assistantship in student activities. So I was able to get that credit that I needed and that experience and still fulfill my obligation, but just in a different route. And so instead of, upon finishing my master's, jumping right into teaching, I actually went into the corporate world for a little bit, not knowing all I know is that I want to do business kind of somehow. I still like learning, but I want to do business. Got in the corporate world, and for about the first 12 weeks or so, oh, I was loving it because I got to travel. I'm doing all this training. I was doing training in what's that expensive part of Northern Virginia? Tyson's Corner. That's where I was. And so I'm up, they're paying for me to go out here. And it was like really cool. Got a corporate card and everything. And then the honeymoon phase of that ended because when training was over and it got time to go to work, I was miserable, like absolutely miserable. So I did that for about a year. I suffered through that and decided that it was time for me to go back to really where I knew I was supposed to be and get into the classroom. And I got into the classroom and felt like I was at home. It was really an eye-opening experience for me because even just from that first day when I got into the classroom, I made, a lot of mistakes, but it was something that I was willing to grow through because I knew that I was supposed to be there.
So you triggered something in my brain. And going back to Hampton, I'm thinking about the student center. I'm thinking about all the different parties. I'm thinking about all the different events. You used to DJ at Hampton as well, right?
Yes, sir. Yep, yep.
So, man, you gotta tell us one, where did the love for DJing come from? And then how did you get on a trajectory of entering into the classroom and then bringing DJing into the classroom as well?
So essentially, I always had a love for music. Everything pretty much that I've done, and even a lot of the things that I do, have roots in music and specifically more over creativity. And so in high school, I had a really good friend of mine who was a DJ. Now I'm talking about the late 90s here. So at that time, when you wanted to be a DJ, you had to have two turntables, microphone, mixer, and records, and a bunch of them. This was the DJ era where you had to have crates. And when you're going to parties, when you're
And
DJing
paint the
weddings,
picture. Where you from? You gotta paint the picture, bro.
I
Where
didn't even
are you
say that.
from though?
I'm from New York. I'm representing Long Island, New York, and like
Yes.
just 100% facts, representing Long Island, New York, and growing up, just being around that area. It was like the epicenter of, just hip hop culture, New York life, DJing, all those things. And so I saw that a lot growing up. I'm radio stations, like even people outside of New York, you've heard of Hot 97. Like that's what I grew up on. It wasn't just like a thing you heard of, it was all I knew. And so I'm just inundated with this. I saw it, I fell in love with it. But at that time, as I mentioned before, like to be a DJ, you had to have money because every new song that came out, you had to buy the record if you wanted to play it. And I didn't have that. And so that was just kind of like a dream deferred at that time, if you will. And so here, fast forward, I get into college. I start teaching, have a little money. So I'm like, all right, maybe it's time to pick up on this idea of DJing. So I tap into my resources, I tap into my network, and I kind of put myself in this mentee position to learn from and take in as much as I can about the art of DJing from DJs like DJ Boogie, DJ Tay James, your LB, DJ Mr. Nice was one of my mentors in the 757 area, DJ Baby Drew, and a bunch of others. And everywhere they went, I went. Like I was literally, especially there was one summer, DJ Mr. Nice, I was his shadow, literally, because I'm off for the summer. So wherever I didn't I didn't have anything else to do. I didn't have no kids, no family. I was about this DJ life. And everywhere he went, I went. And everything he did, I did so that I could start to develop my own personal style. And what happened was I ended up being able to grow into a position where he saw my level of dedication. He saw that I was really here to do this. And it wasn't just like a let me just hang out. No, I'm studying, I'm learning. And he started to give me little tasks and jobs to do, little things like, all right, I'm about to run to the bathroom, just hold it down for me. No problem. Here I, just all those, just trying to take advantage of those spots. And I eventually worked my way up to a position where a lot of times he was very popular in the 757, still is actually. And so he'd get calls from this event, this venue. And if he got double booked, he would say, I can't do it, but Shaun can. And so he felt comfortable enough, trusted me enough, knew I had the skill set and developed it enough to fill in for him. So that was like huge in my development for me. I'm doing all of this while teaching. A lot of my gigs came during the summer, but eventually it started to kind of just be something that became a regular part of my side hustle. So there were many a days. Thursday, Friday, I'm leaving the class, going over across the street in Norfolk to the club. Let's go. I have my turntables and trunk in the back, but I got my laptop with me this time because I don't need to buy every single record that comes out. I can download it. The technology's flipped in 10 years was magnanimous because that I don't even know, even as a full-time salary employee, if I'd still be like having to buy, they come out with songs, like 20 songs come out a day. I don't even know if people realize this or not, but there's a lot of music that drops every single day. Some of it's hot, some of it's not, but you have to, especially, depending on the crowd, you want to make sure that you are equipped. So all I had to do was download stuff and I was good to go.
So, Shaun, okay, you're talking about you're learning, you're shadowing, you're
Yep.
doing everything obsessively, right? Which I think
Mm-hmm.
is a good thing in this case
Mm-hmm.
because you're learning. You want to learn the craft. You want to go to those people who are doing it very well so that you can learn from them, learn their practices. You talk about understanding the crowd, right? And knowing what makes them excited, what puts them to sleep, what gets DJs booed out of the venue. So pause that, right? Now let's look at the classroom, right? And talk about what it meant being an educator. Because then we're going to come back and see how DJing kind of blends with being a classroom teacher and how you moved the crowd
All right. So
slash
essentially,
classroom.
yeah, but it's the same thing, like because essentially when I'm in that DJ environment, I'm in a one-to-many environment, and my job is to get everybody on that dance floor and make sure we have a good time. When I'm in that classroom, I'm in a one-to-many environment. My job is to make sure that I get everybody in the mood to learn and have a good time. There's a certain level of entertainment that has to happen to maintain and capture attention in both roles. And so what I began to discover is that, I am because I'm DJing and teaching at the same time, both at different times of the day, obviously, but I'm growing in both professions literally simultaneously. And what started to emerge, there were some emergent themes, if you will, between what I'm trying to do at this retirement party, at this club, at this birthday party versus what I'm trying to do in the club. There was a lot of things. So, in both roles, like for example, I'm a source of motivation. I'm making real time decisions. I am curating specific content. I am making sure that I'm creating an engaging, enthralling experience, and I'm a catalyst. Like, I use this example. Like, when you have a DJ, and it's one of the worst things to go to a party with a whack DJ. It should be almost criminal.
It's terrible.
It's the
Yeah,
worst thing
facts.
when you have a bunch of people that are just primed and ready to have a good time, and then you just have somebody that doesn't know how to captivate the audience and give them what they want. And it's the same thing that happens in the classroom a lot of times, where you might have an educator who might have that content knowledge, but do they have that relational knowledge to connect with and get the most out of the students that they serve. And so here I am kind of just uncovering all of these commonalities and making this relationship plain and realizing that my skills at the end of the day, my objectives are transferable in one position versus the other.
So, my brother, you end up winning Teacher of the Year. I
Yes,
think
sir.
because of this brilliance that you're talking about, being able to understand the
Mhm.
environment, being responsive to that
Yes.
environment, and
Yes.
meeting needs, whether it's on the dance floor, whether it's at retirement parties. I didn't know you were DJing retirement parties. You were getting it by any means necessary.
Hey, if they paid, I was going. That's it. Doesn't matter.
Straight up, straight up. But then liking that to the classroom and being
Yes.
able to be responsive to your students, being able to pivot in the
Yes.
moment to get
Yes.
the whatever it is. And because of those things, because of the work that you were able to do, you ended up winning Teacher of the Year. What did that mean to you?
It meant a lot because just me being one of the, first of all, few black male educators in the building. And at that time, I think that was going into my fourth year, third or fourth year in the classroom, something along those lines. And it was a reflection to me at that time of the changes that I decided to make because when I started to teach, I knew that I belonged there, but I went about it the wrong way because I taught in a school in the urban community and neighborhood. And because of the perception that I had about the community, because of the perception that I had about the teacher that I was supposed to be for those kids, I went in there and taught in a very strict and cold manner. And I taught like that for 2 years, literally. And did not create an environment that my students felt comfortable, did not create an environment where my students wanted to connect with me, where I could build strong relationships, where all of my students felt seen, felt valued, and felt heard. And I got a rude awakening one day. I got a phone call from a parent, literally, that she said, my daughter's a sixth grader. She said, my daughter is scared in your classroom. Like inadvertently, that is not in my character whatsoever, but I created an environment of fear, didn't even realize it. And so what I had to do right there, that was like a rude awakening for me, is I had to make some changes. And so those changes that I made with being more responsive, being more receptive, being more of a person that my students can connect to, I had to look inside and I had to exercise all sorts of self-awareness and I had to exercise all sorts of advanced just levels of emotional intelligence to make sure that I did the work here so that we can do this work out here in this classroom. So winning teacher of the year kind of acknowledged that work was worth it. Not only was it worth it just from the results that I was getting from my students, but it was good to be recognized that others saw it too because we had, did some really, really good things in my classroom. We got blue ribbon recognition in my department. Like this is something that a lot of teachers in my school district at that time had not done. And so because of that, like I was able to get recognition from like the school board and things of that nature. So it was good to be recognized. And more importantly, just for those children, it was good that they got to be beneficiaries of those results.
Yeah, and with that, it's an acknowledgement, and many people will never see those type of accolades throughout their career. And so, kudos for you for doing that. And it seems that the children who had the privilege to have you as a teacher certainly benefited from that as well. And so, over time, you're putting the work in as an educator. Eventually, you make, I'm sure, a tough decision to transition out of the classroom. So talk a little bit about that decision, then what you went on to do.
Sure, sure. So what happened around that time was me winning teacher of the year. And from that recognition, I recognized that there were some things happening in my classroom that weren't happening in other classrooms, good things. And so I began to take more leadership opportunities to facilitate professional development at the building level and just try to help more. And I started to kind of get this shift for greater calling. I like to do more. And I wasn't really sure how I was going about it, but I just was tugged and pulled to do more. And it's funny, and you can kind of maybe relate to this, but it was one of those things where I'm talking to some of my line brothers. Like, for example, I talked to Tim and was just talking with him. He was either in medical school at the time or getting ready to go to medical school. I can't remember, I might have my dates wrong. But I was kind of talking to him. I was like, you're going to medical school to be a surgeon. You're going to save lives. Like I need to have that type of impact. Mind you, I didn't devalue what I did as a teacher, but I was just kind of venting that I wanted and desired to do more. I have some friends that go on to law school and do big grand things, and so I just kind of felt compelled to do more for a long period of time. And then the summer of 2009, when we were getting ready to start that school year, we had, for our school district, we had an all hands opening convocation. And at that particular time, we were in this huge arena. All the teachers from the district were there, and it's just opening ceremonies, welcome back teachers, yada yada yada. I'm there just like, let me get out of here so I can go back to my classroom and get ready for this school year. And then they had the speaker come out to do the keynote address, Dr. Adolph Brown. And Dr. Adolph Brown
Yeah,
was a
yeah, yeah.
former professor at Hampton. I didn't have him, and I
That's
didn't
right.
know this at the time, but
One
I
of my
found out later.
professors in
Did,
psychology. That's right.
yep, and but me not being a psych major, so I never had him. And he gave a keynote speech that lit a fire under me, and I was like, what the heck? That's it. And so, like, all sorts of bells and like ding, I left out of that thing on fire. Fire. Like, such that this was August of 2009. By October, I was enrolled in a PhD program. I was like, he has a PhD, I need a PhD. He's speaking in arenas, I need to speak in arenas. And so I literally immediately, like, without hesitation or reservation, I knew what I was supposed to do. And so I set out on this journey to learn more, to develop myself, and to really hone in on my skills as a researcher, to make sure that if I'm going to pour into other teachers, that I am well versed, well researched, and know what I'm like. I set out I was in for the long game from day one. I didn't just jump into this and was like, hey, let me speak to all the teachers in your district after, like, the day after that. Like, I went back from square one and realized that there was some work that I needed to do, and I did it. And so at that time, fast forward, it took me 5 years to do that. So 2014, I graduate. I'm still teaching at the K-12 level. I teach for another 2 years. And I get an opportunity now to teach at the university level. And so I move into that role, teaching at the university level, did that for 5 years, teaching in the School of Education and Teachers College. Loved that. Really, really good. Started now to go out and explore professional development opportunities at the school level, at the district level, at the organizational level. Wrote a book during that time there. And that really was something that I was able to kind of put myself out there even further, launch the podcast, all those types of just like strategic chess moves that I'm making little bit by little bit by little bit to kind of just put myself out there in a space that was honestly very unfamiliar, but I knew like I had to figure it out. And I didn't realize it at the time, but like in hindsight being 2020, I was diving into that world of entrepreneurship.
Man, I think you dove in head first. Like it seems like it was incremental, but man, you did it. And so one thing that I don't want to get lost, you heard a message, you were inspired, right? And then you took action on that inspiration. So why do you think so many people may receive a message, they might be inspired, but there's no action behind it?
That's a great question. Couple of different things. Depending on what that action may be. Like, for example, for me, I was able to take action because for that particular message, that was the missing number I needed to unlock the padlock. Like, those, like if you think back to high school and we had those lockers and you have to match the numbers, I had three of them and I just needed that four, and boop, that gave me that fourth one. Boom, it opened. So it was easy to take action. I think in some instances, what can happen is people can feel inspired. I'm willing to bet you that everyone in there left inspired. That's just I feel like you had to be dead if you didn't leave there inspired. Like it was that type of environment. Maybe people didn't take action because my type of action and my calling is not their calling. You see what I'm saying? So it can be easy in those instances to be inspired, to be motivated, but maybe that sort of action for you might look different. Maybe action for them is getting back into the classroom now and having a great year. Whereas action for me was not only getting back into the classroom, but now taking some steps outside of my comfort zone to develop myself into the speaker that I'm becoming.
Bro, I think that's such valuable advice. One very random fact.
Hmm.
At Hampton, I had Dr. Adolph Brown. He was the chair of the psychology department
Hmm.
at that time. And he has this big seminary class. You have to sign up. I was able to get into that class. This was in 2007.
Yep.
And for those of you who don't know, there was a lot going on in spring of 2007 for me. I was pledging a fraternity, man. And so I had a full caseload. I was like, look, man, something's going to have to give. And so I actually ended up dropping his class.
Okay.
And and so I got to miss that class, but I was able to connect with him interestingly within the past year or two,
Okay.
just through social media.
Uh-huh.
But dynamic speaker, just this personality that is bigger than life. So I can see how we set you on fire.
Yeah. And I'm glad that I had the actual chance to tell him that, because I too, I didn't know him at Hampton, but connected via social media later. And I was like, hey, man, listen here. Thank you. Like, seriously, I thank him. I didn't want to seem random, but I needed him to know that he is a big reason as to why I'm able to kind of have clarity and do what I'm able to do today.
Man, that is so powerful. And I hope our listeners can be aware enough to find those moments where they can tap into that inspiration. And it
Mhm.
might not be a speaker, it might be going outside and seeing something that inspires you, but then being encouraged enough to then take action. So, my brother, you have a best selling book, right?
Yes.
MC
Yes,
means
sir.
move the class.
Yes.
How to spark engagement and motivation in urban and culturally diverse classrooms. Best selling book, best selling author right here. My brother, can you talk about that book? And really, what was the inspiration behind that book?
Sure. The inspiration behind that book was my life growing up as a fan of music, particularly hip hop music, growing as a teacher and a DJ at the same time. Where I come from on Long Island, two quintessential and an iconic hip hop DJ MC duo, Eric B and Rakim. They were what we call like pretty much the beginning of many people what evolved to be like, the hip hop MC DJ thing. And so they were some of the original ones when you have a party and you have somebody not just providing music, but you have somebody on the microphone. Like, you see that a lot now. They started that, or were at the very beginning of that, with somebody actually on the microphone facilitating along with the music that the DJ is playing at the back in the background. And so, in one of their songs, I want to say it was it 84, 86, off of the album Eric B is President. In the second verse, Rakim said, Eric B on the cut, like a metaphor for DJing, scratching and mixing. Eric B on the cut, no mistakes allowed, because to me, MC means move the crowd. And so what he was saying in that moment, him being the MC, people know that as like the master of ceremonies. But for him, no, that's not just a title. That is a responsibility to move this crowd. Remember those college parties and things where it could be 250, it could be 500, it could be 1,000 people in front of you. You know how intimidating that is to get all those people to do the same thing at the same time the way you want them to do it. It's not easy, but that the responsibility of that MC to move the crowd, and when you're able to move them, it's a feeling like no other. And so, to me, what that meant was being in the classroom, me being a DJ at night, but being a DJ of my students during the day. It wasn't necessarily about moving the crowd, but moving the class. And so in that book, I illustrate the model that I created, the framework, which I call the elements of urban education, which focuses on four key areas to create balance: achievement, alliance, awareness, and artistry. And the achievement is about culturally responsive instruction. The alliance is about the relationship building factor. The awareness is about the social, emotional, and self care factor. And then the artistry is about creativity in the classroom.
My brother, that is so powerful. And I just love the connection with music and education and bridging those together. That is dynamic. And you're dynamic, you're inspirational, you're all these things, right? But you also are an entrepreneur founder who brilliantly built a brand. That brand being Teach, Hustle, Inspire. Again, you see the swag, multicolors. It's just part of it. But for those who aren't familiar, what is Teach Hustle Inspire, and what was the inspiration behind creating it?
Teach Hustle Inspire is basically it's a movement in education. I mentioned this earlier, but I feel it's important to reiterate. The Teach is about unlocking intellectual treasure. And mind you, that intellectual treasure is not just about the students, it's ours as well. The hustle is about how we can't stop learning and we won't stop learning. The moment that we stop learning, we stop growing. And the moment that we stop growing, we stop living. And the inspire part about it is that connection that we need to spread love and light. We are on this earth as relational beings, and we have to be cognizant. That's it. We have to be cognizant about spreading. I put that there so that if you give somebody a hug, you can see it. You see what I'm saying? Like that's
I
why I
like
put that
that. I like
there.
that.
So I
And for
try
our,
to.
I'm sorry, real quick, Shaun, for our audio listeners, if you can't see on the sleeve of the hoodie, it has spread. It's a heart plus light. And that's what Shaun is referencing.
Yep.
So make sure you go to the YouTube channel so that you could get a visual of what Shaun is explaining.
Yep. And so just trying to help educators be cognizant of these things because at the end of the day, just it can be a thankless profession. We're underpaid, we're overworked. So what I wanted to do was start a movement and create something that we can all galvanize around and help to just push the profession, push us forward in this space. A lot of people have asked me, like, how did you come up with this? Like, kind of what you said, like it kind of just took things by storm. And while what a lot of people see today with Teach Hustle Inspire is something that truthfully the brand itself made its way to this world in 2019, but this is a result of my work since 2009. You see what I'm saying? So all this time you're talking about 12 years of just research, growth, my own learning, my own facilitation of learning, seeing what is out there. And I never really intended kind of to create a brand per se, but that's just what it evolved into. And truth be told, Teach Hustle Inspire is actually a reimagination of my previous brand. Because if you look on my Instagram page right now, like you'll see for the past 2 years, everything Teach Hustle Inspire, but I rebranded because I started in 2017, kind of in this education entrepreneurship space, if you will. And so I'm sitting in my office one day, just kind of, I can't remember exactly what I was doing. And the good Lord, I promise you, just as sure as I'm sitting here, just kind of dropped those three words in my spirit and kind of like what it can mean. And I was like, wow. And I just came up with and kind of played around with the design a little bit. I designed it myself and kind of just put it out there in the world. And literally from that day, I want to say it was like January 2019. It was just like, oh, that's pretty cool. Boom, 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 boom. I got a couple of messages in my social media inboxes like, hey, let's put this on a shirt. We can sell this. And I was, slow down there, player. Like those types of things. Like I was like, I got that under control. Thank you very much. But it was kind of just an affirmation that I was on to something with that. And what I did was just took that and put my energy behind it, make sure it was something. And I think what helps to stand out, honestly, is if you see, a lot of times there are other educators who have their brands too, and they're doing really, really phenomenal things in this world. What helps me, I believe, to stand out is that this brand is not just reflective of me, it's something that is reflective of us. That you as an educator, you as an educator can identify with. Like I'm tapping into it. I didn't even realize this at the time, but it makes sense now. I'm tapping into identity. People can identify with this. It's not hard to sell the vision of Teach Hustle Inspire because people can instantly identify with it.
And for those reasons, you have built a super strong following on social media, but it's bigger than that. It's a sense of community
Yeah,
that, at least from my perspective, that's what I'm seeing. And along this entrepreneurial journey that you've had, you've been able to do some really cool things. You have coming up a virtual conference,
yeah.
Build on the Side.
Yep.
Talk to us about what this next endeavor of yours is.
Well, this is just kind of a result of a need that I see to be fulfilled in the community and space of education. Because many of us, we already know that we are not paid the way that we need to be with the significance that educators have on this earth. And knowing how I got started in this space of being an entrepreneur, being a speaker, I had to make sure that I put myself in a position to do this while still working full time because I was not in a financial space where I can just say, all right, I'm going to resign and now I'm going to become a speaker. I had to do that literally. I did this for since 2009 and I left the classroom K-12 space in 2016 and the college space literally just this past September still in 2021. All up until that time, I was doing both, building on the side. Get a lot of questions sometimes. How can I do that too? Like I work with a lot of dope educators that I can see having a really, really strong impact on this world and in this world with their message, with their ideas, with some of the products that they have. But what I, and this is kind of some of the same struggle that I had, is I knew that my particular lane was to help communities, help schools that serve in urban and culturally diverse communities not just survive, but thrive. Like that was my focus. That was my niche. I narrowed down in that. And so when I set out to do that, I had the research, I had the pedagogy, I had the products. What I did not have was the entrepreneurship side. I didn't have the marketing. I didn't have the branding. I didn't have the how do I get myself out there? How do I get people to buy it? I didn't have any of that. And so here I am. I launched my first website for my consulting company in 2016, Ideal Education Consulting. Launched it, put the website up, built the website on the back end, did all kinds of stuff, WordPress, all these types of things, and got not one sale. I launched it, had to, hey, I'm out here now, I'm speaking. Nobody, crickets, because I had not, like, we have this idea if we build it, they will come, but that's not true. If you market it, they will come. And I had to learn that. And so I went back to the drawing board and studied marketing out the wazoo. I studied entrepreneurship out the wazoo. I started hanging around and being around other people who were in this space and literally tried to emulate and make what they were doing fit for me. And it changed everything for me. And I was able to get myself out there, be in more spaces where I could make myself available to the people who needed my services. And so this event essentially is about helping educators. And so with this conference, the focus on this conference, Build on the Side, is to help educators do just that. To understand that you can still teach full time, but build something that you are working on the side, whether it is to be in this space as a speaker, a consultant, or own a consulting firm, go on the road and speak to colleges, speak to teachers, speak to students. I mean, it's wide open as to what you can do. And we also have some speakers and presenters that will be talking about creating education products. So we have some people that are going to be speaking that have done phenomenal work creating products for teachers, paid teachers, and to supplement their income, creating courses and selling. This is something that can be passive income. You create a course one time. You can create a course literally one time and continue to market and sell that one course over and over and over again. And it's not just selling a course, you're selling a course that's making a difference for somebody in the classroom. Like, that's the thing about it. I'm trying to put people in a position where they can take their gifts and talents and skills and monetize it, but not only monetize it, you can make a difference. Like, you can serve and be compensated for your service at the same time. And truth be told, part of this is just being honest. I struggled. I had this idea a long time ago. And I struggled bringing this to the world because I think for a lot of us in this profession, we live with this, for lack of a better term in the moment, we live with this guilt. Like, we feel that because we are in this service-based industry, we feel that we should accept just this compensation that we get and learn to live in this struggle. Like, when we accept that, and we have this almost inherent kind of guilt when opportunities for prosperity come along, when we start to talk about wealth and money creation. And I got past that. I struggled with that for a while, but I got past that because at the end of the day, we deserve abundance. There is nothing wrong with wanting more. especially when that more can help someone else. And so the lessons that I've learned, again, I've been working on this since 2009. I didn't have a lot of, at that time, particularly when I had made that decision, I wish I would have known the things that I know now. And I could have easily cut down that time significantly. So I want to make sure that I can put people in a space where they can take their gifts, talents, and ideas, especially those that can change the world, and give them a framework to do that.
This is going to be a must see event. We'll have in the show notes all of the conference information, how you can sign up, how you can get registered, and make sure that you all take advantage of that. Man, okay, so we're going to shift gears a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to know, Versus is this big thing.
Yep.
There was a recent Versus, my favorite group, one of my favorite groups of all time, 3-6 Mafia versus Bone Thugs and Harmony. That just happened. It's where two artists perform all of their different hits, for those who aren't familiar. You're a musician, you're a DJ. In your perspective, dead or alive, who are you putting on that Versus stage?
So I'm going back and forth about this because thinking of from an entertainment perspective and just being a fan, I'm thinking about growing up, like I would love to see like a Michael Jackson Prince. I can't remember where it was, but there was somebody that used to have an annual party, like Michael Jackson versus Prince. That would be so dope. But the hip hop in me wants to see Biggie and Tupac. Like I would be there with a bulletproof vest on. I'm not even gonna lie, but I think that I would love to see something like that.
Who's winning?
Oh, Biggie, of course, New York, without a doubt, without a doubt.
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for that one to drop. Okay, so we have a group chat with all of my LBs, and we were talking. One of the things that we have recommended, and see, I like Southern music, right? You're in New York. I like down South music. Grew up in the DC area. I like go-go as well. But two things I would like to see, two verses. I would love to see, on the one hand, Kanye versus Jay-Z. Someone said Kanye versus Drake, right?
I can see that.
I can see that. Yep. But another one I personally would like to see, and I'm interested to hear if this is like your flavor of music. I would love to see a Project Pat versus Bun B. What do you think about that?
I could see it. It's not my milieu, my cup of tea, but I've dibbled and dabbled in both. I'm not as versed in that realm of hip hop so much as I am like, East Coast, West Coast. It's just one of the things coming to college. Like, you talked about the chapter and the frat and everything. One of the things coming to college is that it just exposed me to is that there are just so many different types, so many different flavors of hip hop. I grew up on just up top, up north, Busta Rhymes, Jay-Z, Biggie, Nori, like that's the type of hip hop. But then coming to Hampton and realizing that, well, there's actually this group. You have the Midwest, you got Dirty, you got Texas. Like it was slightly culture shock to me. Some of it I gravitated to more than others. Project Pat was not one of them. So I just
bro, I think Project Pat is one of the greatest rappers of all time. I know the New York in you is like, that's blasphemy, man.
It is. Oh man.
So look, okay, one more for you. For you. In a versus, Jay-Z versus Nas.
Yeah.
Who you going with?
Ooh, Jay. I gotta say Jay. Ooh, I would love to see that. I really do. But I just, especially him getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What was that? Just a couple of weeks ago, something like that. Yeah, I would love to see that, man. That would be dope.
That's a good one. I don't think people will be mad at the Jay one right there. My brother, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
My closing thoughts would be this. Like all too often, I think we devalue our gifts. There's something that you have, there's something that you can do that you undervalue and therefore underestimate. A lot of times we're told by people, wow, you're really good at this, or I really like it when you do this, or I don't even think you realize that when you said this, it made me feel good. But we take these things, and because we have a natural gift, because we have a natural preponderance to just excel in certain areas, we devalue them. I want to challenge people to really think about those gifts, skills, and talents that you have and really think about what it might be to share that with the world. Because there's something that you're sitting on that somebody could use and that would be a blessing to someone. So, my final thought would be to just really take that time to look inward and see if there's a difference that you can make in this world by sharing your gifts.
How can people find you on social media?
teachhustleinspire.com. I'm on all forms of social media. If you look up the hashtag teachhustleinspire, I'm there. I'm on Twitter at Shaun Woodly. Teach Hustle Inspire is too long, but still the hashtag should work and lead you right back to me.
My brother, thank you for this healing centered conversation, man. Much appreciated.
No problem. Thank you again for the opportunity to share this space. And definitely, I love what you're doing with everything that you have going on. I will say this here, as I've said to you before, I'm very, very proud of you with everything that you're doing, with everything that you have done. I'm even more proud of the fact that I get to call you my chapter brother, excellent husband, excellent father, excellent entrepreneur yourself. Keep holding it high.
My man, no choice, man. No choice. Thank you for those kind words, man. You've been crushing it. Definitely look up to the example that you set it, man. Much appreciated. Thank you for this Healing Centered conversation. Listeners, thanks for tuning in to the Healing Centered Conversations podcast. Make sure that you leave a positive review, subscribe. Make sure you follow across all social media platforms at Healing Convo Pod. Until next time, take care, everyone.